welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are pleased to have you with us today. On our show today, we will be taking a look at the latest iteration of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. We're excited about it. And I've got my good buddy Caleb here to talk about it with. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm great. How are you today, Mark?
Excellent. I am doing pretty good. It's been an interesting day in my life, but I'm so excited to be here doing this show. Let's do a little bit of groundwork here. First of all, we are sponsored by progressivechristianity.org. We highly encourage you to go to progressivechristianity.org and check out all the resources there. Also, please follow us on Facebook where you get our updates. You'll know what shows are coming out. And if you have thoughts or suggestions, we can talk about it there as well. And most importantly, as always, be very heavily aware that this is a spoiler-full zone. We will be spoiling the heck out of this movie, and that includes a twist that happens that we will probably end up maybe bringing up depending on where the conversation goes. So please know that that is going on. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about our themed cocktails. Caleb, what are you having today?
Very important to start out with a drink.
Absolutely.
That's right.
We've got to start it right, man.
Got to, yeah. And what's more right than starting out by drinking? So we're talking.
It puts you in the right frame of mind, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
So we're talking about Wakanda Forever, and I thought,
yes.
Okay, I need something that's kind of a dark drink, and I went to my cabinet and I thought, what strikes me as a Black Panther drink? And so I didn't look up any cocktails. I just did it myself. And so I thought, okay, I need some alcohol in there. I'm going to put some vodka and Kahlua. I've got Kahlua.
Right,
that's dark. And then I put
Lovely.
soda water in here. So I think it's actually a fizzy black Russian is what I've made. But the interesting thing about this, Mark, I want to know how this tastes in a moment because I only had vanilla vodka. And I also only had lime soda water.
With the Kahlua.
What soda water? Lime soda water. So I've got vanilla and kind of coffee flavored and lime.
All
right. So let's. I'm going to go ahead and taste it.
Let me see what you think of it. I'm very curious.
You know what? I think it goes together. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Very
okay,
nice.
How about you? What are you drinking?
Well, I did look up a drink, and I've gone with one that is the Heart of Wakanda cocktail. I thought, particularly with the heart-shaped herbs that they use, and then we have Ironheart, who makes an appearance in this. So this drink is 2 parts vodka, 4 parts of grenadine, 4 parts blue curacao, a splash of lemonade, a splash of lemon lime soda, and then just for fun, I've rimmed it with some nice purple sugar, and we get this nice kind of dark purple, almost like the liquid from the heart-shaped herbs. So I'm sure this is going to be good. I'm not worried about it at all, but I'm going to have a sip right now.
Yeah, tell me.
And it does not disappoint. It's quite delicious. Quite delicious.
Now, but does it take you to the ancestral plane? Are you on the ancestral plane right now?
I am pretty sure if I drink enough of this, I will be.
You will be.
All right. Let's go to a break, and we'll come back on the other side with our Geeking Out segment. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where today we are talking about Wakanda Forever, and we are going to have some spoilers, as Mark mentioned.
Absolutely.
This is our time to geek out about this wonderful movie. So this is the sequel to the well-reviewed 2018 film Black Panther, and it shows the nation of Wakanda in the wake of King T'Challa's death, and particularly follows King T'Challa's sister, Princess Shuri. Now, I think there's a lot to unpack with all of that,
Ooh.
but I think maybe the first question mark that it might be good for us to kind of dig into and geek out about a little bit is,
Yeah.
how do you think they dealt with King T'Challa's death? Were you happy with kind of the way that they dealt with that? They didn't really give much of an explanation of what
Yeah.
happened to him. What do you think about that approach? It's difficult whenever the main
Mhm.
character who's holding the movie together
Right.
is no longer there. The actor dies, and it's
Yeah.
always a thing. Can you continue or not? They decided to. They decided to shift gears a little bit and
Yeah.
deal with what happened in the wake of the character's death, as the
Yeah.
actor who played him died. What do you think? What do you think about the way they handled it?
I thought they did a fantastic job. I mean, there were so many decisions that had to be made. They had already written the script for the new movie, and they had to go back and redo the entire
Mhm.
thing. I love the way they handled it. That they didn't make it. They didn't try to recast him. They didn't try to
Right.
make up some kind of crazy battle scene where we halfway see him and he dies in it or something. I love the fact that they dealt with the fact that the audience, that the actors and actresses, that the director, who was close friends with
Mhm. Mhm.
Chadwick Boseman, that we were all dealing with grief, and that this movie without him was going to recall some of that. And I think they did not only a brilliant job of how they handled it, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the choices they made, because I think some
Yeah.
of them were
Right.
brilliant. But the fact that they went ahead and just basically made this a movie about grief, which ties in so well, actually, oddly, with Phase 4 of the
Yeah. Right.
MCU, that there's been a lot of stuff about grief. We kind of the theme that we got from was it Vision, who said, "What is grief if not love persevering?" Which
Great
seems to
line.
almost be at this point like the arching statement over Phase 4 in a lot of ways. I don't know. I mean, what do you think of how they decided to approach this?
Yeah, I agree. I think they handled it very well. I think it was wise not to give too much detail. I think that allowed us to really focus on the characters and the grief. And
Yeah.
I noticed that connection with Phase 4 too, and both the theme of grief and of upending kind of the normal and they expected the status quo. And so
Right.
in like Into the Spider-Verse, right, we get this notion of everything that we've known is forgotten and only one character or two kind of remember what's going on. And Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we get the Scarlet Witch going
Mm.
through after her grief that you were just mentioning in WandaVision. She goes through and destroys whole universe trying to recuperate from grief. And so I agree with you. I think that grief is a prominent theme of this, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things that I think is brilliant about the way that Marvel makes films. Is that
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways that's reflective of what we're doing in society, and I think the best films are reflective of the time period in which they're made, right? And so we're
Yeah.
in this time of grief with
Yeah.
as we're kind of post COVID, hopefully post Trump, right? He's right.
Seem to be
There's no
angling that way.
yeah, hopefully post Trump, and yeah, I think that grief is so important in all of this. So one of the other things that I noticed, Mark, and I'm curious
Yeah.
about how you thought about this, is that Black Panther, I think, in thinking about how it's tied into culture, Black Panther in 2018 was such not only a significant film, but it was culturally significant because it showed for a lot of Black Americans in particular what it might have been like if there were a country that were uncorrupted by Western influence, by colonialization. And I think that
Mhm.
that was hopeful for a lot of people. How do you think that this film did in living up to that reputation? I mean, is it going to have the
I
same
think
kind of cultural impact? What do you think?
he's going to have the same, but it is going to have an impact on that. And I think they did a great job of furthering the discussion about colonialism, dangers of it, and how horrific it is. I even love when we shift over to the new civilization that we find out about,
Mhm.
and Namor talking about how he ultimately he is a result of colonialism, And we
Yeah.
see when he comes ashore, when the priests are still occupying the land of his people. And I love the way they basically show religion assuming something is evil and demonic just because it doesn't understand,
Mhm.
because they see him come above, and then the priest says, "Thou
Mhm.
art a demon, son of
Right.
Satan." And it's really just that something I don't understand and I can't comprehend, so I immediately are going to cast you as evil. And I think they
Mhm.
did a beautiful job of continuing the conversation. In this one, we don't see it being made quite as primary, because I think they necessarily focused on, I would say, grief, its relationship to vengeance, and then hope and love and unity. And I felt like that was such a brilliant move. When it first came out, we were dealing with a lot of folks, particularly in the United States, feeling more free to be aggressive towards minorities. And so the
Mhm.
empowerment that came from the movie was so important. And as you pointed out, hopefully we're past that kind of Trump era, and to move into the grief and the need and the feel for vengeance, but also the voice of living into love, and how hopeful that is, and how important it is to find unity. I think we're at the perfect stage in our history to be refocusing on those things. And I love that they've kind of made that shift as they were trying to help us process the grief of losing this amazing actor and the lead in the story that we all have become so invested in.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really made this movie work was exactly what you mentioned, that they really did deal with colonialism in a
Yeah.
very, I think, in a very powerful way, seeing this
Oh, absolutely.
Mesoamerican culture that was
Mhm.
impacted by colonialism, the influx of smallpox and other disease, and they had to take this mystical kind of potion like the one you're drinking today. No, that's different, isn't it? So that's a different
Well,
potion.
I'm hoping it's going to be mystical after the second one. I don't know. We'll find out.
So they take this potion that allows them to breathe underwater, to live underwater, and we see what
Mhm.
Mesoamerica might have been if it were untouched by colonialism. And I thought
Right.
that that was really powerful to see
It was.
that there's this other culture that was that had been untouched. So I think that's one of the things that really made this film work, is that they leaned into another marginalized community. One thing that made me nervous, though, Mark, and
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, is that
Mhm.
then uh, the folks who were this Mesoamerican underneath the water kind of civilization were outwardly aggressive to attack the world. And
Yeah.
I was afraid of how that was going to play out. Like, are we portraying people of color as inherently violent and vindictive?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
did you have any of those concerns as you saw any of that,
Well,
or did you
I
have
mean,
more
I
faith
was
in Marvel than I did?
I was obviously very interested to see where they were going to go with it. I did
Yeah,
like, though, that they were being honest about when you have when you as a people have
yeah,
been marginalized and lorded over by a group of folks, that there is this natural need not only to react maybe in a vengeful way, but in a protective way. They did seem to play with this idea, particularly in Namor, and the way that he was talking about why he wanted to kill Ironheart ultimately. Um, that it wasn't like, I love the shift. It felt like vengeful at first, but then it was like, look, this is just about protecting my people. Like,
mhm,
we can't have that colonization and everything that it did to our people was so horrible that the death of one person might be necessary. I love that ultimately it doesn't happen. And I think that's what we got to focus on, is that there is a progression of learning and recognizing what we need to be and who we need to be. But I love that they were willing to address that, because he's this wonderful bad guy, because you kind of get why he's the bad guy. And I
that's right.
love that we see that a lot in Marvel. Um, and there is this just edge where, as he talks out why he wants to, destroy people or the world or whoever, but particularly Ironheart, you kind of go, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Like
Right.
this makes some sense. I love that they were willing to grapple with it, but even more so, I love the outcome that they had in that they recognized it wasn't necessary.
And I think that that is one of the things that makes this movie really brilliant is that the outcome we come up with shows, these two countries that are warring with each other, but really have a lot in common. And what it
Oh, yeah.
takes is extending some understanding and compassion. And so whenever Shuri decides that she's not going to kill this king of this underwater empire, and she decides to extend him grace and to say, hey, look, I think that we have a lot to learn from each other, and that we could work together. Whenever she extends kind of that diplomacy, that it really enables these communities to live together. Yeah. And that was like a personal lesson for me too. Like, man, oh yeah, even when people have really wronged you, it's better if you can find a way to live in grace. It's better if you can find a way to remember that that person is a human and think about what that person has been through. And whenever she comes to that decision, I thought this was a brilliant moment. We see flashbacks of her story and his story lining up. And so we see these people who have both personally really suffered, but also their communities have suffered as marginalized people. And it tells those stories in parallel. And that was really a powerful moment for me.
I agree. And I love the line, as you point out, that they talk about, you talked about personally and as community. And the line where she shifts, she says, vengeance has consumed us. Speaking of her and Namor, I will not let it consume our people. Oh, it's kind of a beautiful moment where it all shifted, where it was recognizing that it's bigger than me and bigger than us. And that whole vengeance theme, vengeance has consumed us, was such an important part. And it was important in relationship to grief. And I loved how that played out when she drank the liquid of the heart-shaped herb. And we go to whatever her ancient ancestral place is going to be, because it changes for different folks. And we think, oh my gosh, like, I don't know about you, I panicked a little bit when she came in from behind the throne, and it seemed like, oh no, are they going to show her brother? Because if they're going to do some kind of CGI, it's like, how disappointed am I?
No, thank you. Please don't. Yeah.
But then it turns out to be Warmonger, her cousin. And the discussion they have is so incredible about why she's there. And it does begin to play out. Like, that's a big turning point in the movie. And that's why I keep going back to they're making this interesting connection between grief and vengeance, particularly when grief is because of an outside source, not of natural causes. And she's looking for vengeance for her mom, just like Warmonger was looking for vengeance for his dad. And I just love the way that they wove that theme throughout the movie, and then let that big final fight scene be the moment where, like you said, through visions, they recognize the importance of not letting vengeance consume the people, because they know that would be the end of the people in some ways.
And I love that whenever she had that conversation with her cousin on the ancestral plane, that we didn't get to see all of it. And we don't get to see the final part of that conversation until she's in this last minute, this battle where everything's on the line. And we flash back to the ancestral plane where she says, I'm not noble like my brother. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to make him pay. But then she decides not to, which I think is a powerful statement about us always having the power to change our mind, and always having the power to confront vengeance and violence. And that was good. So I love this. I wish we could geek out about this for a long time, because I also want to talk about cinematography. I also want to talk about that incredible score. I want to talk about
Angela Bassett. We haven't even talked about her performance. Oh my God, she was amazing.
I know.
I can watch clips of her doing Queen Ramonda like over and over again, and
all
just have
day,
that on
all day.
loop. It was incredible.
Can she be our queen? I mean,
Yes,
it's
please. Yes, please.
there's so much to talk about, but and we've already kind of started talking about theopolitical, and that's because in a movie like this, it's so
Yeah.
interwoven into the fabric of what the movie is, you can't help it. But I think we need to formally switch to talking about theopolitical. So how about this? How about we take just a break for just a moment for the drop and come back and talk about theology and politics.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our theopolitical segment, and Caleb, I'm just going to be honest. I think that I'm going to keep this. A lot of times we're heavy political. I think theologically there's a lot of ground to kind of struggle with here, and I want to start with just a straight up theological that they set up at the beginning of the movie, and get your take on how it plays out throughout it. At the very beginning of the movie, as her brother is dying, Shuri prays to their God and basically says, "Hey, if you'll let me make this potion to save my brother, I will start believing in you, or I'll stop doubting in you, or whatever." So my question to you is kind of twofold. One, what do you see her path being throughout the movie, and does she end up being a believer at the end? But two, how does that relate to us as people, particularly progressive Christians? In one of my favorite lines in the Bible is, "I believe, help me in my disbelief." I'm curious how you feel like that her story in this movie might relate to particularly progressive Christians in our willingness to struggle with theological positions and even in our belief in what God is or isn't.
So that's a great line. The very first line in the movie, right? "Help me heal my brother, and I'll never question your existence again." I mean, for a theologian, you can't ask for much of a better line to start a movie.
The rest of the movie right there, you're like, okay, I am paying attention.
That's right. I mean, especially for folks like us who go into the movie to watch it, knowing we're going to talk about it. That's great. And how many times do we hear as pastors, Mark, people bargaining with God? If you do this for me, I will do this. I will believe in you, as if what God necessarily needs is belief.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
The first part of your question, I'll try to address first. So, does she become a believer? What's her path like? Does she become a believer? I don't know that she becomes a believer as much as she sees that it's necessary for her people. And so I think she comes to realize over the course of the movie that the rituals, the practices, the beliefs that her people embrace are important for them culturally. I think she sees herself as finding meaning in other pieces, and particularly in technology. And I think she's supposed to represent kind of this tension between modernism and traditionalism, and pushing her people towards modernism. And I think that's supposed to reflect our own struggle as a society between modernism and traditionalism. But of course, as you and I think both are on the same page about this, Mark. I don't think it's dichotomous, right? It's not one or the other.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things
you're jumping way ahead of me. That was going to be my next question to you. So I love that you've already. This just shows that we are in the same space, man. I'm with you.
I know it, Mark. We've been doing this for too long together, right?
Right, exactly.
But I think this is something that Shuri stands to learn from her people, because one of the things that I thought was beautiful about this movie was that it intimately married the traditions and the technology together, the present together, right? So like in thinking about the funeral, as they're doing this ancient kind of dance, they're singing the songs of their people, they're having this funeral rite, and then King T'Challa and then later the Queen, they're then lifted up into this great technological aircraft, right? That's beyond understanding. And so they married these two things together. And I think that faith can be like that, that our faith can marry what's going on that we know to be true in the world around us, advancements and all, with traditions of our past. So part one, I don't know that she became a believer, but I think she has some stuff to learn from her people. Part two, what does this say about how we deal with God? You know, I think that I think that a lot of people try to bargain with God and try to have these conversations where they say, God, you know, if you'll do this for me, then I will do this. And my favorite line that you have said, Mark, and I love this, is that you compared that kind of request to a vending machine God, right? You put in something and you expect something out.
I think I think it's Pete Ennis. I'm trying to remember who. It's Dreyer, I think. Anyway, I stole the line, but it's just the perfect.
For me, it's you, Mark Sandlin. Mark Sandlin said, "There's a vending machine God," and
you put the prayers in, and the blessings come out.
And the blessings come out, right? And so that's bad theology. And so I think that a lot of people espouse that kind of bad theology. What do you think, Mark? Sorry, that was a long answer to a two-part question, but I want to know what you think about it too.
I absolutely love your answer to it. I think that she begins as a complete non-believer, and by the end of the movie, that she is believer curious. Like, I think she's had some experiences. Like her mother, when she first tries to get her to burn her funeral garment, tells her that after I did it, I felt the hand of your brother on my shoulder, and she says, "Yeah, that was probably just the wind or something, Mama, whatever." Yeah. But at the same time, going back to how they handled this is going to be a kind of convoluted answer here. Going back to how the movie handled the passing of Chadwick Boseman, I love that at the beginning of the movie, right as the funeral is beginning, we get that wonderful, Marvel logo roll in that happens. But they've replaced all the superhero movies with him, and I felt like that was sort of an ode to his character. Not to his character, but to the actor. And there was this wonderful thing that happened. All the music dropped out, and all we heard was and in theology, God is Ruach, is the spirit, is the breath, is in the breath. And then at the end of the movie, as she finally, she didn't burn that garment with her mom, but she finally at the end of the movie goes, after she's kind of carried that garment with her throughout the movie, kind of carried that grief with her through the whole thing, including carrying her brother's grief into her mother's funeral and grief. At the end, when she burns it, all the music drops out again. And we get this. And for me, there was this kind of beautiful moment where I can't help but wonder if she made this connection. That hand of my brother on my shoulder, the breath of his spirit is still with us. For me, it felt like maybe she had this brief moment of maybe there is something. Maybe it's not what my ancestors thought, which, let's just be honest, a lot of progressive Christianity is about that. That what we understand God to be, how we experience the afterlife or whatever, might not be what our ancestors did, but we believe there is something there. I kind of feel like she may have arrived at a moment where she felt like there was something that she. But I just love that they were willing to struggle with the relationship between science and spirituality, and not be dismissive of either, but to make space for them to exist together. Yeah,
I love that too. And I'm thinking, as you were talking about how that mirrors my own journey. I've always kind of believed in something, and I've always been a part of church. And but early in my ministry, I was much more skeptical of people's experiences like that. And so, like, if people would tell me they had an experience with with God, or they saw God or saw a loved one or something, I'd be like, okay, well, there's probably some kind of mental illness at play here in this conversation.
Yeah. Hey, that's fair. It's fair. Yep.
And I mean, maybe sometimes there was, but I think over time I've said, Caleb, you need to be a little more open to what's possible. I mean, not discounting science and experience and psychology, but saying that, hey, people can have experiences that you can't explain. And you need to let those people have those experiences and not automatically snap to a judgment and try and diagnose these people. Don't have your DSM open necessarily as you're trying to.
Well, and that leads me to another question that I feel like was being openly asked, and you kind of hinted at that. That's where Shuri arrived. Is that do we, as a peoples, do we hold some of our religious beliefs because they are true, or is it sometimes that we hold them because they make us feel better?
Yes. So I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately. As based on the conversations I've been having, but I think a lot of people really want to hold on to religious beliefs simply because they make them feel better. And even as people are in the process of deconstructing, right, which is what we talk about a lot in progressive Christianity, deconstructing this history of belief that we've inherited and what we can let go of and stuff. And I feel like for a lot of people, the reason that's threatening is because ultimately for them, some of these beliefs hold comfort. And I'm thinking particularly about beliefs about, say, things like heaven and an afterlife. Is this something that is?
And I want us to talk. I want us to talk more about this. So please continue.
Yeah. So people, I think, even if they say, okay, well, maybe it's not real clear what the Bible says about this or about what actually happens, but I want to hold on to this because it's something that's personally significant to me. And at a point, that's where their deconstruction stops. Or when they begin reconstructing, then they have to deal with that in a different way. So I think that a lot of times people have trouble with their religious beliefs around this theology of an afterlife. So I'm curious what you want to dig in deeper with.
What I want to dig in on is, look, I'm one of probably I am one of the bigger folks that criticizes traditional theology for being simple-minded and not based on reality and not investigating the text well enough. I was actually introduced by another minister to someone else as a iconoclast. Like, this is one of the people who figured out how to be on the inside and insult all the stuff that's going on. He meant it as a compliment. Because he's one too, ultimately.
Yeah.
But I have been recently in life, because of folks that I care about, struggling with. Let me back up. This is what I've been struggling with, but I'm going to do it through the movie. My question is the ancestral place. In your opinion, and how it has been presented, is this an actual place, or is it a construct in their minds? I mean, Warmonger basically says Shuri conjured him. So is it a construct, or is it meant to be real? Where do you think they're going with that? And I think this is an important question, and we're probably going to run over on this segment because I really want to dig in on this a little bit.
Yeah. So I think that's a great question, and I don't think the movie answers it for us. But I think that really what it is and the same for us, right? Because I don't think we necessarily get an answer to this in our life and in our faith. But I think it is a construct for her, and so that she in her own mind conjures the person that she needs to move forward. But yeah, I don't
Right.
think Marvel gives us an explanation of that. What do you think?
I completely agree. I don't think they do.
Yeah.
But here's my struggle with progressive Christianity in this
Yeah,
particular
tell me.
area.
Yeah.
We do a really good job, and I think
hmm
necessary job at disproving traditional theology about the afterlife, and that there's going to be some happy place, this golden streets, and we meet our loved ones and all of that. And can prove pretty much that the Bible never meant to imply that was just a human need that got imposed on the Bible. Here's the thing that I am struggling with. We do an absolutely horrible job at replacing it. We do great at tearing it down.
That's true.
But what are we giving people to say here? Because this movie is ultimately a movie about hope and moving forward. What do we give people when we deconstruct the afterlife, which played a very important role in this movie? What do we do that allows people a place for hope of what it might be about reuniting in some ways? And I'm going to point towards that there's emerging science, and I think the movie talks, kind of the play between science and spirituality. There's science about parallel universes and stuff that they're starting to emerge that seem very real, that could give us hopeful spaces to investigate. But it's almost like we're more interested in just disproving the old tradition, but not replacing it with something that's actually hopeful.
I think
am I overstating?
No, you're not overstating, because I think this is one of the struggles we have in progressive Christianity, and this is something that I've talked about quite a bit with folks, is that we're really interested in deconstructing. We're not real interested in reconstructing. And I think we're reaching a time when we need to be giving people something. So in terms of what we're thinking about, in terms of the afterlife and how it is that that people live on, and how we replace this notion of kind of eternal life, I think I'll answer that with some insight from the movie. So I think what Princess Shuri discovers is that that maybe she has some things to learn from those who have died already, who have passed before her, and that she can implement in her life. So like whenever she's driven by vengeance, and then she decides that she does not have to act out of that maybe her mother and her brother have some wisdom to pass on to her, and she makes that choice in the moment where she can kill the king, and she doesn't. I think that in a way she's allowing their lives to influence her. And I think that's the reconstructing that we have to do, is that those people who have been influential to us, that their lives don't stop having an impact on us just because they're no longer with us in the same way, just because they've died, but that their lives continue to influence us. And in fact, if these are people who have lived good lives, right, who have followed the teachings of Jesus about love and compassion and care and justice and peace, if we then implement those in our lives, then those people are not dead. They're living with us. And so I don't have anything to add about parallel universes or how all it can work. I
want to go there a little bit.
Their influence can,
I'm going to piggyback. I'm going to piggyback off of what you're doing, because I completely agree with you, and I think you're right on the point. Right. And my first overly simplistic answer is
the wind.
The wind, the spirit of a person. Like we are molecules, we are atoms that are built around a spirit. And we are seeing science start to talk about parallel. I mean, we know that energy doesn't cease to exist. So where does it go? Right. We're starting to see science talk about parallel universes. I think that end scene where she's sitting at the fire and she hears that air, that ruha, that spirit breathing across and somehow experiencing her brother in it, is an answer for us. And I think science can help us say, this isn't some really lovely poetic thing. It is a lovely poetic thing, but it doesn't stop there. That we're beginning to understand some scientific realities that suggest that their existence, that our experience of them is just different now, but it's still there. And that doesn't preclude exactly what you're saying of also living into who they were and expressing it in our own lives and carrying their life through that. And there's something beautiful and lovely and eternal about those things.
Yeah.
All right.
I love it.
Listen, we could go on and on with this. We've already gone over this segment.
And we
Take
will.
a break here. Yeah, we will. Yeah, we're going to take a break here, and we're going to come back with our favorite segment, Make Me Look Stupid.
Woo! Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are in our favorite segment, Make Me Look Stupid. Thank you for all of you who have hung around for all of this
Yes.
moonshine and theology talking and political talking and discussion of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So there are a lot of things that we talked about today and a lot of things we could talk about. But here's what I want to know, Mark, because we haven't gotten to this yet, and I think this is essential. The plot twist that you mentioned earlier, which is that I'm assuming that you were referring to this mid-credits scene where we discover that that Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman's character, had a kid with his girlfriend, and so here he is living in Haiti. The son is living in Haiti with his mom. And so I'm curious what you think that's going to mean. Is that kid going to become the Black Panther? Is he going to become the king? Is Shuri going to stay as the Black Panther? What do you think is in the future for the Black Panther franchise? And what do you think?
I think Shuri's going to be Black Panther briefly. And I'm going to say something that's going to make people not like me. I think she's going to die within the first movie of her being Black Panther.
No.
Yeah, I got a feeling because of that post-credit scene. I think what we're going to have, because we're about to move into Phase 5, which is going to play a lot, I believe, particularly since Kong is going to be such an important part of it. I think we're going to be playing a lot with timelines. So it will not surprise me that this kid that is too young right now to be Black Panther, through something that happens, ends up being old enough to take over that helm and might necessarily need to because of her passing. I don't think they would have set it up knowing that, well, we've got another 18 years before this actor can actually take there's no way they did that. They wouldn't have given him his name if they weren't planning on having him do. And like I said, I am fairly certain, I could be completely off base, but I'm fairly certain that because of Kong, we're going to be dealing with timeline stuff. We're going to be jumping all around, and it wouldn't be surprising that someone who is too young right now, even Wanda's kids who aren't quite old enough to be superheroes, but are going to be part of the new Avengers, at least they are in the comics. I kind of feel like that might be where we're heading. I don't know. I mean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he will be eventually. I hope that Shuri gets some time as Black Panther. I think it was pretty powerful to have a female in that role and to really have strong female leads. I think that is one thing that Marvel has done very well, is to give us in these in Phase 4 in particular,
which means leading. I definitely believe that Phase 5 is going to be primarily female superheroes, which is going to be brilliant and add so many new perspectives and angles to what it means to be superhero. I'm excited about it.
I am too. But I hope Shuri doesn't die in her first outing. Let's give her at least one other outing, because she didn't really get to be Black Panther very much in this movie.
Think that she'll have. I think she'll have one almost full complete. I think at the end of whatever her next one is, that
dead.
I hope I'm wrong. But why
I
do you
hope you are
introduce this
too.
kid? Why do you introduce this kid
I know.
at T'Challa's like?
You're usually right, Mark. You're usually right. You
I'm
know,
wrong
and
sometimes.
so. But you know, that's one other thing we didn't talk about this movie is that this was very different than I thought it was going to be. I didn't really expect. I thought she was going to instantly take over the mantle of Black Panther, and she really didn't until 3/4 of the way through the movie. Maybe even later than that. And so
it's
I hope
actually
she gets
one
a
of
full
the.
movie.
I like that she did. One of the things that we haven't talked about is I think this is probably a better movie than the first one, and here's why. I think there's some meta level things that are going on in this movie. I think this film itself, like you back out from it, I think the film itself is a metaphor for grieving. We deal with grieving in it, and we do some great stuff in it. I think the film itself is a metaphor for grieving because the film, if you really kind of are analytical about it, is a little bit messy because like it's a superhero movie, and because it's a superhero movie, you need fast pacing. You need this needs to happen. You need to move on. You need to get to the next thing. You need to get the next thing. But it's also a story about healing from grief, which needs slowness and reflection. And I feel like they figured out how to do them both, and that is such a reflection of what our lives are like when we're in grief. We need slowness. We need time for reflection, but life is still going on. Life is still moving, and we have to figure out how to weave the two in and out of each other. And so I kind of feel like they did this incredible job of doing that with this movie for sure.
They definitely did, and I mean that's maybe one of the reasons it was 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Absolutely,
and
right.
I will admit that that's one of the things that I thought about as I was going.
Oh yeah,
both I really wanted to see this and like, ooh, it's almost 3 hours.
Do I have time to see this?
Do I have time? That feels like a lot.
All right.
Okay, yeah. Tell me.
Here's my question to you.
Okay.
Do you think that vibranium was sent to Earth? And assuming that you do, because you should, who sent it?
Ooh, who sent vibranium to Earth? So I do think it was sent to Earth. I mean, they even said it in the movie.
They hinted at it pretty strongly, I think.
Yeah, they said because there was the myth that it was in Wakanda, and they said, well, if a meteor hit, it could have very well hit somewhere else besides Wakanda because Earth is mostly water. It would have hit somewhere in the ocean. That makes sense. I want to hear where you think.
Yes, it's been so long. It's been so long since one of us stumped the other.
I'm not gonna say I don't know. I'm gonna say I just really want to hear where you think it was sent from. Tell me.
Okay, I think looking at the way that they are telling Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the MCU, knowing a tiny bit about the comics. Yeah. I think that vibranium was sent by the Celestials. You know, those giant godlikes that had like eight eyes down the front of their. Yeah. And I suspect their armor is actually built from it because in the comics we find out that I'm trying to remember. They need. I don't know if they need or it makes it easier, but when they incubate, when they make new Celestials. They need vibranium to be part of it. They need a space to incubate in, and vibranium is kind of the essential piece of that. So I feel like what we are having is a lead up to Phase 5 where we're going to see the Celestials being more and more involved, and that vibranium was sent to do two things: to provide an incubation place prior to all of the races and all of the civilizations that are here, and they incubated in it. But knowing that they could then use it, that mortals on the planet could use it to help them in the coming eternal war.
Yeah, I think that's a great
I got a little too deep geeky on that, didn't I?
I love it, Mark.
I showed my
and
geek card a little too much.
You
Right?
you showed it. You showed it.
A little too
That's
much.
great. And you know what? During Phase 5, I think we're going to find out one way or another. We'll find out if you're right or not.
You're fair. That's
And,
right. Yeah, fair enough.
But I think that's
Fair
a good theory. We could talk about Wakanda forever.
We've missed so much.
And
We've missed
we
so
probably
much.
would. Because we're already over time, and I know that we would love to continue this. But here's the thing: we got to end the show, and we've got to let them know, Mark, what we're going to talk about next week.
I am very curious. Do you? I am sort of out of ideas. What are you thinking we should do, man?
Okay, so as you know, I do love Marvel, but I grew up with DC, and DC is close to my heart. And it's a decent time to be a DC fan too. I'll admit, DC is not as strong as Marvel, but
particularly the movie universe. But the serials, the television stuff isn't too bad, man. I've seen a lot of good.
It's not too bad.
Yeah,
there's some good stuff, especially Titans. Have you been watching that?
I've just started trying to catch back up. I dropped out on season 3, and I think season 4 is out now. But I have just recently started rewatching season 3.
Okay, well, I've been making my way through season 4, and I got to tell you, it's really good. Yeah.
Nice.
So, what do you think about doing that next week? Titans.
Season 4 of Titans.
Season 4 of Titans. It's on HBO Max.
I'm all in. I'd love to do that.
Okay. Next week, we'll talk about Titans. Watch it on HBO Max. Okay, until next time, we'll catch you on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine